Chapter 15. Clothing is optional, control is not. Alternate, the first time Elias doesn't put pants on. The lake had become routine, and that alone would have been unthinkable a month earlier. Afternoon light slanted through the trees, dusting the water with gold, the surface barely disturbed except where Juliet moved. Slow, deliberate strokes, careful of her shoulder, confident in everything else. Inside the cabin, the radio was doing what it always did, narrating their lives with infuriating accuracy. Sade, smooth operator. Juliet rolled her eyes when she heard it drift through the open window. Of course, she muttered, floating on her back for a moment, letting the lake carry her. Subtle as a brick? She waded out, water streaming off her clothes, breath steady, muscles pleasantly fatigued. Elias was already on shore, towel over one shoulder, cats scattered in their usual supervisory positions. He didn't immediately reach for the towel. Juliet noticed because her brain noticed everything now. Elias peeled off his wet shirt without comment, then stepped out of his shorts with the same lack of ceremony one might apply to taking off boots. And that was it. No pause, no glance, no performance, just a man standing comfortably nude in the afternoon light, wringing water from his hair like this was the most normal thing in the world. Juliet froze halfway up the path. Her reaction wasn't fear. It wasn't hunger either. It was surprise, pure, bright, undiluted. Elias noticed the stillness immediately. He turned slightly, registering her expression. "Oh," he said, entirely too calm. "I should probably explain." "That would be good," Juliet replied faintly. Inside, the music shifted. Bare-naked ladies, lovers in a dangerous time. She snorted despite herself. "Your radio is a menace." Elias smiled, a small wry curve of the mouth. "It's very invested in us." He reached for the towel then, wrapping it loosely around his waist, without urgency. "I grew up around nudists," he said. "Not as a thing, just a way of being comfortable, no hierarchy, no expectations." Juliet blinked. "You're serious?" "Completely." He met her eyes, steady, open. "If it's not okay, I'll stop. No problem." The offer was real, immediate, no defensiveness. Juliet searched herself honestly. She wasn't threatened, she wasn't diminished, she wasn't expected to reciprocate. She was simply aware. "I'm okay," she said slowly, "just wasn't expecting it." "That's fair." The radio, as if deciding to redeem itself, rolled into hothouse flowers. "I can see clearly now." Juliet laughed then, short, genuine. "Even the universe is teasing me." Elias shrugged. "It has a sense of humor." They walked back to the cabin together, Elias pulling on loose pants eventually. Not for her, Juliet realized, but because he needed to cook, and splattering oil on bare skin was a bad plan. She watched him move with new eyes. There was no claiming in his nudity, no assertion, no invitation, just comfort, just choice. Later, sitting on the porch with a mug warming her hands, Juliet replayed the moment privately, not with arousal, but with something more unsettling. Control, not his over her, his over himself, and the fact that she hadn't been required to do anything with what she felt. She filed the information away carefully, not as temptation, as data. And somewhere deep inside, a new truth settled quietly into place. Her body did not automatically belong to the moment. Neither did his. And that, unexpectedly, made everything feel safer than it ever had before. Chapter 16. Strategic Flirting for Beginners. Alternate, she knows exactly what she's doing now. The first thing Juliet learned was that flirting didn't have to be loud, and it could be quiet, measured, intentional. Inside the cabin, the radio murmured like a co-conspirator. "Jeff Beck. 'Cause we've ended as lovers." The guitar slid through the room like silk pulled slowly from skin. Elias was at the table, cleaning a piece of equipment, movements precise, absorbed. Max sprawled across the back of the couch like an orange and white king. Trixie perched near the window in judgmental silhouette. Nova curled in the warm pocket behind the wood stove. Juliet watched Elias for a long moment. Then she moved, not closer, just differently. She leaned against the doorframe instead of sitting, crossed her arms loosely, let her weight rest on one hip. It was nothing. It was everything. Elias looked up, paused, recovered. "What?" he asked. Juliet smiled, small and unreadable. "Nothing." The word landed wrong, or right. His jaw tightened just a fraction before he went back to his work. She noticed. That was the second thing she learned. She noticed everything now. She walked past him deliberately, close enough that the air shifted, close enough that her sleeve brushed his forearm. Not accidental, not urgent. Consent lived in the pause after. Elias stilled. He did not reach for her. He exhaled once, slow, through his nose. "Juliet," he said carefully, voice level, "is this on purpose?" She stopped, turned, met his eyes. "Yes!" The radio clicked, betrayed them again. REO Speedwagon, "Can't fight this feeling." Juliet laughed under her breath. "You've got to be kidding." "I swear I don't control it," Elias said, but there was color rising in his cheeks now. Not embarrassment, effort. "Good," she said, "because I do." The words hung between them. Dangerous, not explicit. She stepped back, giving him space deliberately, proving the point. His shoulders loosened a notch at the release. That was the third thing she learned. Power wasn't pressure. It was choice. Later, over tea, she asked questions that weren't really questions. "So," she said mildly, wrapping her hands around the mug, "you always this disciplined?" Elias met her gaze steadily. "Only when it matters." "And does this matter?" A beat. "Yes." His answer was immediate, honest. No bravado. The radio slid into something sharper, defensive. "Quarter flash. Harden my heart." Juliet tilted her head. "Looks uncomfortable." "It is," Elias admitted. He set his mug down carefully, like it might shatter. "But discomfort isn't harm." She absorbed that, filed it next to the lake, the fire, the nudity without expectation. She stood, brushed imaginary lint from his sleeve, light, fleeting. Then she stepped away again. Elias closed his eyes briefly, opened them, still didn't move. "Good," Juliet said softly. "You're doing great." The praise hit harder than any touch would have. She saw it, saw the strain, the restraint, the respect holding firm under pressure she was now consciously applying. And for the first time since everything had been taken from her, Juliet felt something profound settle into her bones. She wasn't reacting anymore. She was acting, not to manipulate, not to provoke collapse, but to test the edges of safety she now trusted. Power didn't have to be cruel. It could be gentle. It could be reversible. It could belong to her. And as the music played on and Elias stayed exactly where he was, wanting, respectful, visibly human, Juliet knew the balance had shifted. Not broken, shifted. And for the first time, that felt like freedom. Chapter 17. Bethany Winter files a report. Alternate, somewhere else, a sister works. Bethany POV. The office smelled like burnt coffee and carpet cleaner, government neutral, designed to forget itself the moment you left. Bethany Winter did not forget rooms. She noticed the way the fluorescent lights flickered a half-second out of sync, the way the security glass distorted reflections just enough to make people look unreliable. She noticed which desks were empty after hours and which were never empty at all. She shut the door behind her with care. Inside, the radio on the filing cabinet was already playing, someone's attempt at morale. Powder Blues Band, hear that guitar. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The guitar slid through the office like something stubbornly alive, refusing to be buried under paperwork. Bethany dropped her jacket on the chair and opened the file again, though she didn't need to. She knew it by heart. Northern Supply anomalies, unregistered freight, disappearing manifests that reappeared altered, scrubbed, or mislabeled as seasonal loss. That phrase made her jaw tighten every time. Seasonal loss was weather. This was pattern. She typed steadily, fingers precise. Filed under joint review pending CSIS oversight. Physical verification ongoing. Recommend continued low visibility field checks. Low visibility. The euphemism of people who knew exactly how dangerous something was and wanted it written gently. The radio crackled, changed stations without permission. 4 non-blondes. What's up? Bethany snorted quietly. Yeah, she muttered. That's the question. She leaned back and stared at the ceiling, letting the song wash through her while she replayed the last 3 weeks in her head. She had been north, cold docks, unheated warehouses, men who answered questions too quickly, and women who didn't answer at all. She had walked past a man in Prince Rupert who smelled like diesel and expensive cologne, whose eyes tracked exits like a professional habit. She had shared an elevator with a woman in Vancouver whose accent slid just slightly east of neutral and whose phone never stopped vibrating. They hadn't known who she was, but they had known what she was. Curious people were dangerous. She closed the file and opened another, older, deeper. Names she wasn't officially allowed to connect. Smirnova surfaced twice. Only twice. Enough to matter. Bethany didn't linger on the name. She had learned long ago that staring directly at power made it aware of you. Instead, she worked sideways. She went back into the field. The warehouse was supposed to be empty. It never was. Bethany moved through it quietly, boots silent against concrete, breath slow. Her flashlight stayed off. She didn't need it. The moonlight through the high windows was enough. Crates marked agricultural equipment. Too light. Too sealed. She photographed. Logged serial numbers. Didn't touch anything she couldn't justify later. Somewhere a radio played faintly from a security shack down the block. You too. Still haven't found what I'm looking for. Bethany paused, listening. The song followed her out into the cold night like an accusation. She leaned against her car for a moment, head tipped back, breath fogging the air. She felt it then, that familiar, unwelcome sensation. Proximity. She was close to something, not answers, not yet, but close enough that the wrong person might notice. Her phone buzzed. CSIS oversight. Status update requested. She replied with the truth, trimmed to safety. No confirmation yet. Network appears compartmentalized. Will advise. She slid the phone back into her pocket and drove. Later, alone in a rented apartment that smelled faintly of bleach and old heat, Bethany finally let herself stop moving. The radio came on automatically when she flicked the switch. Someone had left it tuned just right. Powder Blues Band, Hear That Guitar Again. She poured a drink she didn't need and didn't finish, sat at the table, spread maps out like tarot cards, lines, routes, missing points. One absence gnawed at her, not a data point, but a person-shaped hole she refused to name. Juliet had been declared dead months ago. Bethany had signed off on the report herself. She did not question it. You didn't survive by questioning everything. But sometimes, late, when the music was low and the city sounded too empty, Bethany felt it anyway. A wrongness, like a song cut off before the final chord. She shook it away. There was work to do. Somewhere else something was moving, and Bethany Winter, filing her reports with clinical precision, had no idea she was walking parallel to her sister's life, close enough to feel the echo, far enough to miss the truth entirely. For now. Chapter 18. The monster is a spreadsheet. Alternate, Juliet solves the case by accident. Money was already playing when Juliet woke up. Not metaphorically, literally. The cabin's ancient stereo had a personality, temperamental, stubborn, loyal to presets no one remembered programming. Elias must have turned it on before dawn, low enough not to wake her, loud enough to keep the silence from doing what silence did best. Pink Floyd, money. The bass line pulsed through the floorboards, steady and unbothered, like a heartbeat that had decided panic was inefficient. Juliet lay still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, cataloging herself. Arm, stiff but functional. Mind, clearer than yesterday. Dreams, mercifully absent. That alone felt suspicious. She rolled onto her side and listened. Coffee grinder, paper sliding against paper, the soft click of a pen. Elias was already working. She dressed quietly and joined him at the table, where chaos had achieved a kind of order. maps, printouts. A laptop open to a government shipping database that had not been designed for curiosity. Juliet wrapped her hands around a mug without speaking. The music shifted as if on cue. Dire Straits, Money for Nothing. Elias glanced up, a corner of his mouth twitching. Your stereo has opinions? It's judgmental, Juliet said. I respect that. She leaned over his shoulder, not touching, just close enough to see. Shipping manifests, dates, ports. She frowned. That's wrong, she said before she knew she was saying anything at all. Elias turned fully now. What is? She hesitated, searching for the language. Her brain had slipped into a place she hadn't consciously entered, the same place it used to go when patterns clicked before permission was granted. This, she said, tapping the screen, these losses aren't random. They're staged to look sloppy, but they're too consistent. He didn't interrupt. He never did when she sounded like this. Juliet pulled a stack of papers toward her, ignoring the protest in her shoulder. She rearranged them, lined dates up, cross-referenced ports against rail spurs and private airstrips she remembered from maps she'd once studied for entirely different reasons. Her pulse quickened, not fear. Focus. Look, she said, everyone's chasing the folklore, Kajuta-Juke, northern monster, ghost roots. But this, she gestured to the numbers, this is procurement behavior. Elias went very still. Procurement, he repeated. Yes, someone's not moving finished product. They're moving components, incomplete shipments, old stock. She flipped another page. Aged stock. The music shifted again, sharper, louder, like it approved of escalation. A C/DC, money talks. Juliet exhaled a short, incredulous laugh. Oh my God. What? Elias said. This isn't myth, she said. It never was. It's inventory laundering. She stood, pacing carefully now, the way she did when ideas arrived faster than her body could safely follow. Late Cold War. Soviet research programs didn't disappear overnight. They were mothballed, buried, forgotten on paper but not physically destroyed. Her voice picked up speed. Biological agents, Elias, incomplete strains, delivery research, half-abandoned labs with budgets that got reallocated. She stopped, looking at him. Someone found them. Elias felt something shift in his chest that had nothing to do with threat assessment. You're saying this whole thing, he gestured at the maps, the cabin, the months of running, is about money. Of course it is, Juliet said softly. It always is. She sat again, suddenly tired. The adrenaline faded, leaving behind a strange calm. They're not resurrecting a weapon, she continued. They're selling fragments to private buyers, states who want plausible deniability, corporations who want leverage. She swallowed. You don't need to believe in monsters if you can manufacture fear cheaply. Elias stared at her. Not at the papers, at her. He had known she was intelligent. He had known she was observant, resilient, capable of things she didn't yet trust herself to name. But this was different. She hadn't cracked the case through force or access or training. She had understood it. You did this by accident, he said quietly. Juliet blinked. Did I? He nodded. Most people need permission to think like that. You don't. She looked away, unsettled by the intensity in his voice. I just listened, she said, to what didn't make sense. Silence settled between them, thick but not uncomfortable. The music rolled on, unapologetic. Pink Floyd, Money, reprising, as if the stereo had decided the point bore repeating. Outside, the lake was calm. The myth, stripped of its teeth, retreated into what it had always been, a costume. Inside the cabin, something else solidified. Elias reached for his notebook, already adjusting plans. Surveillance routes, names to pull, old contacts to wake carefully. Juliet watched him, a strange warmth blooming in her chest. Not attraction this time, not fear. Recognition. For the first time since Pandora Avenue, she wasn't just being protected. She was contributing. And Elias, soldier, fixer, restraint incarnate, realized with something like awe and something like dread that Juliet Winter was not collateral. She was the sharpest mind in the room. The monster, it turned out, had never been mythological. It was a spreadsheet, and Juliet had just read it out loud. Chapter 19. Aftercare is not a suggestion. Alternate, what comes down must be held. The crash didn't come immediately. That was the trick of it. Juliet finished explaining the last thread, where money disguised intent, where fear laundered accountability, and then nothing happened. No alarms, no men with guns, no sudden need to run, just quiet, and too much quiet. The stereo filled it gently, as if aware it needed to tread carefully. Enigma. Return to innocence. The opening chant was soft, circular, not demanding attention, just present. Juliet sat at the table, hands wrapped around a mug she wasn't drinking from anymore. Her leg bounced once, twice, then stilled when Elias's gaze flicked there. Not disapproval, just awareness. He closed the laptop without ceremony. "That's enough," he said. Her head came up. "Enough what?" "Enough input," he replied. "You solved it. Your nervous system hasn't caught up yet." She opened her mouth to argue, then didn't. Instead, she nodded. That, more than anything else, cost her. Elias moved the papers aside slowly, deliberately. No sharp sounds, no sudden gestures. He had learned her rhythms the hard way, by watching her flinch when the world moved too fast. "Come sit by the fire," he said. It wasn't a command, it wasn't even quite a request. It was an offering. Juliet stood, her body suddenly feeling heavier than it had all morning. The adrenaline that had sharpened her thoughts was draining now, leaving tremors in its wake. She made it 3 steps before the room tilted. Elias was there instantly, but he didn't grab her. He stopped just short, hands visible, voice steady. "Can I touch you?" She swallowed. "Yes, please." One hand at her elbow, one at her back, firm enough to anchor, light enough to retreat if she needed him to. He guided her to the couch by the fireplace, where the air was warmer and the world smaller. The music shifted without either of them noticing the moment it happened. Thompson Twins, Hold Me Now. Juliet laughed weakly. "Your stereo's being on the nose again." "It's earned the right," Elias said. She sat, then slumped, not collapsing but letting go. Her shoulders shook once, as if testing whether the weight was allowed to drop. Elias sat beside her, close but not touching. Not yet. She stared at the fire, at the way the logs shifted and settled, consuming themselves into something quieter. "I feel stupid," she said suddenly. He shook his head. "No. I mean," she rubbed her face with her good hand, "I just cracked something huge, and now I feel like I might cry over—" "Nothing. That's not nothing," he said. "That's your body realizing it's safe enough to stop." She huffed a breath that might have been a sob. "Can you—" she started, then stopped. Elias waited. "Can you hold me?" she finished, barely audible. "Just hold, not anything else." "Yes," he said immediately. He opened his arms slowly, giving her time to change her mind. She didn't. Juliet leaned into him, her forehead pressing into his chest first, tentative, like she was testing the temperature of the water before stepping in. When he didn't tense, didn't shift, didn't turn it into something more, she exhaled and let herself fold fully against him. Elias wrapped his arms around her then, one across her shoulders, the other around her back. No wandering hands, no pressure, just containment. She shook, not dramatically, not violently, just enough to let him feel it. The fire crackled, the cabin creaked, the world, for once, did not intrude. The music softened, transitioned. 38 Special. Hold on loosely. Juliet snorted against his chest. "That's unfortunate timing." He smiled just a little. "I'll have words with it later." She stayed there a long time, long enough for her breathing to slow, long enough for her fingers to curl into the fabric of his shirt, not grasping, not clinging, just anchoring. Elias stared into the fire, his jaw tight. This was harder than restraint had ever been. Not because he wanted sex, though he did fiercely, achingly, but because every instinct in him wanted to fix, to claim, to promise things he couldn't ethically offer while the world was still hunting her. So he did the only thing that mattered. He stayed. Juliet shifted slightly, her cheek against his collarbone. You didn't say it. Say what? That I'm safe now. He considered that carefully. I don't lie to you. Her fingers tightened once, then relaxed. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For holding me like this doesn't mean you expect anything later. Elias closed his eyes briefly. It never will. That answer cost him something. He paid it willingly. They stayed like that until the fire burned lower and the music looped back to silence. When Juliet finally pulled away, she didn't look embarrassed, just tired. Soup? He offered. She smiled, small and genuine. God, yes. As he stood, she caught his wrist, not stopping him, just touching, grounding herself in the reality of him. Elias? Yes. I don't think I could have survived this without you. He met her gaze, steady and unflinching. You did survive it. I just stood nearby. She let go. The stereo, mercifully, stayed quiet. And for the first time since the monster had turned out to be human, Juliet slept that night without dreaming at all.